Welcome back everyone. As I was teaching the file and exceptions, now what I'll be teaching is nothing but string and array list. I know that all of you are using string till date, and we use like percentage, then formatter, printf, and then how to format a string and all these things. We have done that. Now today what I want to delve into it is like few advanced string operations such as split, substring, etc, etc. And then also I'll be talking about array list, why we need array list and what is the benefit of array list over an array. We have seen how to use array efficiently when we are trying to get a number of element and things like that, or like we want to get minimum out of few numbers. Now today we'll be talking about a special Java data type array list and why we should use it. So let's start with string. String is one kind of primitive data type. It is like integer, double and things like that. String is nothing but an array of characters, but string is a special data type where you store the character array and it stores the length and all these things, so you don't need to consider. String also provides you tremendous amount of functionality, because if you treat it as an array of characters, that's not enough. Sometimes you want to compare two strings whether they are equal or not, and those need special operation, because you have to compare each of the character in the string. It is not simply as if like comparing with equals operation and things like that. You remember how equals operation works, right? In Java, it basically points out whether two variables pointing to the same memory location in memory or not. That's how equals works, and it works for integer and double and that kind of stuff, because they compare the values. But for string, the variable contains the pointing to the location, so string will contain like if both the string are located in the same memory or not, right? So equals will not work. You have to use a specific function such as equals. Okay, the string is basically special data type that we will be using. So let's say first is like in integer you use a plus operator to add two numbers, right? In string also you can use the plus operator to concatenate two string. That means those string will be joined together. So if your two string f name and l name are Harry and Morgan, then if you do string name equals to f name plus l name, then it will join them together and your resulting string will be like this. Now remember, here usually in human eye we should put a space in between, and human knows that, but computer doesn't know that. So you have to put a space specifically for this case. In this second case, you see what I am doing is I am putting the first name, then I am putting a space which is also a string, and then I am putting a last name. So when I am concatenating all these three, then it becomes a string like this. Got the idea? Okay. Also, string class provides a special concatenation operation with numbers as well. So if we have a string a and then we put a plus sign and a number, string will convert this number to a string or character array and then concatenate. So if you have agent and 7, then it will become like this. Here similarly, oftentimes what we do, we put a string message in print, when we are printing to the screen, and then we directly put a plus and the number. So here this message will be printed, and then this number will be printed on the screen. So this is how strings are handled. Let's go to the next. To take a input as a string, so what we can do, we can directly use the scanner. In the previous example, we were seeing that we were taking the scanner in and then just simply saying next. That way it can read the next set of characters till there is a white space. White space may be space, tab, or new line, right? Then we can also take input through this this method, which is called next line. Next line will read the entire next line. So you might ask, what is the difference between int next and in next line? So scanner.next, that read, let's say you type something like, let me see if I can type something here, or let me go back to Eclipse. So if you have a input like this is input, okay, and you are at this position, if you use scanner.next, it will take this particular string as the input. However, if you use scanner.nextLine, then this entire line will be taken as input. So basically what is happening, in next it reads till the next white character, but in next line it tells the next new line character. Okay, so that is the difference between scanner.next and scanner.nextLine. Then we have like widely using these functions like parseInt and parseDouble. So there are functions. So integer is a class here. Integer class has a function called integer.parseInt that will convert an input string into an integer. Now it will raise a number format exception if this input string is not of integer type. Similarly, for double, we can write double.parseDouble and then put the string such that the string, whatever number is represented in the string, it will be converted to double. It will also raise the exception if the number is not a double number. Let's say you put a normal string like S or something, that cannot be converted to a double, so there will be that kind of number format exception will be raised. So these are some of the string operations that we usually use. One is the plus, then like this kind of operation, and then in .next, especially scanner.next, next, this will take the input from the console, and str.char@, and this is the another function. What we can use is if you have a string, let's say Sally, and you use char@ function, then it will return the character that is at that particular index. Now if you put some index, let's say for this Sally you put an index 9, then you will have an index out of bound exception, because 9 is not covered by this particular string. The length of the string is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so there will be that exception. Okay, again there are other operations such as string.substring. Substring will do is what? It will subtract the string or generate a substring from this index till the 4 minus 1, that is 3. So it will generate, it will start from 1 to 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3. So it will generate A, L and L. It is somehow confusing why we use the last, not use the last index. It is very confusing, but that's what we have to remember. The substring, whatever we put in these two tuples, so the first one is the starting index and the last one is ending index plus 1. So you have to always subtract 1 from the number pointed here, and then you can understand what is the string provided. So if you do str.substring 1, okay, you are not providing any number after this, that means it will start from the index 1 and it will go till the last one. So in this case, ALLY will be printed, taken as a sum string. And here similarly, I told you it will start from index 1 and till 2 minus 1, that is index 1 itself. So it will be 1. Okay. So let's go to the next one. So here we kind of conclude our operation for substring, a string. We will use another operation that is called split. And split is nothing but splitting an array, a string, with for some characters, right? So if I say Sally and then dot split, okay, and then we provide the character A, then it will split the string into two separate strings where the first one will be S and the second one will be LLY. We'll be using it today's example and we'll see in more detail. So let's go to our understanding of array list. Now we understood array, right? In array, what we do, we store a few elements in a contiguous location, right? So, and we index by array 0, array 1, and so on and so forth. Now if we want to insert an element, right, what you have to do, you have to first move the last element to the next, the n-1th element to the nth position, and so on and so forth, right, till you vacate a position and then you insert something over there. That is how you do that. Now these operations are pretty common and we oftentimes use it. So if you ask a user to write insertion operation, deletion operation themselves, it is pretty hectic. Instead, we should create a library function which takes care of that. And that's when array list come into picture, right? Another case where we want to have array list is, think about it, if you exhaust your all the places in an array and you still want to add one element to that array, what happens, right? You have to create another array, copy all the elements over there and have an empty space, right? And then you insert an element and then you can have that array, right? So array is limited by so many things, like you cannot extend its length, you cannot delete a position in the middle or something like that, or you can insert a things in the middle. If you want to insert a element in the middle, what you have to do, you have to move all the element yourself and then insert. So shouldn't it be beneficial if you have already inbuilt functionality that can help you with that? So that is when the array list is very essential. Array list is basically a wrapper on top of array. It stores the values in an array actually, but to the users or the programmer's interface, it provides all the functionality like insert at any position, delete any element, and all these things. You don't have to consider moving all those elements. Okay, so how to define an array? Array list. This is the method to define an array list. The signature should be, remember, array list. This is a class, okay, and then you have to specify the data types that you want to put in the array list. So array list can be of array list of integer, array list of character, array list of string also. Okay, here I am defining an array list of string, and this is the name of the variable. And then again we have to do new array list. This will construct the constructor. This will call the constructor of array list, and we specify what kind of data type it will hold. It will hold the string, right? So this is the way to define an array list. When we define an array list, it defines an empty array list. Okay, and if we want to add an element, we simply call this function the ArrayList dot add, and this add function adds the element at the end of the list. Okay, and if we want to get an element from the array list, we simply use the get method and we indicate the index from which we want to get the element. Similarly, we want to set the element, okay, like this. Okay. If we use set element, remember that it will not add another element, it will just like edit the element at the ith position and put that whatever element you are providing. Here I am providing a string Harry, so it will just write the string Harry over there. Okay. Remember, when I am doing this set operation, this I has to be within the length of the array list, and it is greater than 0 and of course less than the size of the array list. The function size lists the size of the array list, similar to array.length. But remember, here size is a function, whereas array.length is the length of the array, okay, which is not a function, which is a member variable. Okay, let's move on to next. So as I was saying, add, if you don't provide an index, then it will add at the last. But if you provide an index, okay, 1 or anything or 0, it will insert element at this position, but it will also take care of moving the element afterwards. So let's say you have an array list such as this, right? Emily, Bob and Caroline. Now your operation is, you want to do names.add and you provide the index 1 and then you want to put the name Anne. So what will happen? First, Bob and Caroline will be moved to new position, okay, and there will be a vacant position for Anne where your new element Anne will be inserted. So array list takes care of moving all those elements to the consecutive location and then creating the vacant place and then inserting over there. That is the beauty of having array list. And also you don't have to never think of what is the like extending array and like exhausting your all those indexes and all this stuff. So in array, what happens? You have to first define how many elements you want to put in the array. In array list, you never have to define that. Array list will always take care of defining the extending the list whenever you use the add operation or something like that. So these are the functions that are possible with array list. The first one being the first one is the constructor, where I already said you have to call this like array list and then you have to provide the data type, what kind of data type this array list will hold, and this is the constructor. And remember, when you do this new array list constructor, it will define an empty array list. If you do this now names dot size, it will return you 0. Then we have function called add, right? If we add something, it will be added to the end of the array list. So here, if we do this consecutively, your list will be Anne and then Cindy. If you want to print something, array list have a toString function. Okay, so toString function will be printed here and then prints. It will put square brackets at the both end and it prints the string separated by comma. If array list was of type integer or double, the numbers will be printed instead of string and they will also be separated by comma, and there will be this square brackets as well. You have also add operation where you can indicate the index, and in this case what will happen is all those previous elements will be moved to the next position, and there will be vacant position at that index 1, and then this will be printed. This will be Bob will be pushed over there. So if your array list was Anne and Cindy, then what will happen? There has to be a vacant place at 1, so Cindy will be moved to next position, and then you will be in the new list will be like Anne, Bob, and Cindy. If you put names remove 0, then it will remove the element that is at the 0th position. So your Anne will be removed. So what do we understand? So in this particular case, your 0th position will be removed, right? If we do set operation, then remember, set will not insert element, set will just edit the element at that particular index, and whatever string was there, it will be replaced with Bill. So it will be Bill and then Cindy, because we have already removed something. So it is Bill, Bob and Cindy. Now it will be edited to Bill and Cindy. Now if we have a get function, that is get I, then this will just get the element at that particular position, and string last equals to if we want to get the last element, then we have to first know the size of the array list and then put the -1. This will get the last element. Now when should we use array and when should we use array list? Now I have specified that array list is basically a wrapper on top of array, right? So array list in its implementation use array. It provides like this. It already writes the functionalities. Whenever you want to insert something, it will move all the elements. When you want to remove something, it will also move the elements. So all these things are there. And if your list array is exhausted, it will create a new array, copy all the element, and then insert these elements. So array list is actually using array in its basic implementation, but it's a wrapper, right? Then when you should use array and when you should use array list? You should use array when you know what will be the size of your array, and it never changes. Then array is faster. You should use array list, okay, when you don't know what will be the size of your array, and it's very dynamic in nature. It changes throughout your code. Then you should use array list. This is the decision factor of choosing array versus array list, right? Now let's understand what are the differences between different functionalities of array and array list. So if you want to get the value at position 4, for arrays you write it like this, value, and then within square bracket you write 4. That gives you the element. For array list you have to use the get function, which is a getter function basically. Similarly, if you set some value at a particular position for an array, you just simply write value 4 equals to 35. Here you have to use the set function, or sometimes we call setter function. Okay. Similarly, if you want to know the length of the array, the length some array.length is basically gives you the length of that array. For array list, you have to use this size function. You have to call this particular method to get the size of the array list. Remember that in an array, in our last week's code, when we were calculating the minimum and maximum, if we want to use an array, then it might happen that we declare a huge number of array, and inside that we might be using n number of elements, right? So, and that's how we used to use in C and the other primitive programming languages. In that case, when sometimes you would want to say the array is defined as 1000 elements, but we are only using n number of elements, let's say 100. So that way your actual usage of the array is smaller. But for array list, you don't need to consider declare a huge number of array and all this stuff. It takes care of all those things, and there is only a single function called size which will return you what is the usable length of this particular array list. If you want to remove an element, again you first remove that element. Let's say you want to remove an element at 3, right? And then you have 7 elements. So you remove that element, and then from position 4, you bring that element to position 3, and then position 5, you bring that to position 4, and so on and so forth, and you bring the 7th element to 6th element, right? That's how you remove an element in array. In ArrayList, you just have a single function, right? And it takes care of everything. Similarly, you have if you want to add an element, this is you have to first check if the array has some things left. If it is not, you define a new array, then you copy all the elements from the old array, and then you add something at the end. But for the ArrayList, you just simply call the add function. Now, if you want to initialize, then you can initialize the array like this, right? You just use the curly brace to initialize an array. But unfortunately, for the array list, we don't have an initializer function. So how can we do that? We have to do first, define the array list like array list within triangular back int values equals new array list value. We have to do that, and then we have to say values dot add 1, values dot add 4, values dot add 9. This will initialize the array list. So this is the way to treat the array list. Now today we will do some programming practice to talk more about the string, that operations that we have learned, and how should we treat inputs, and also how should we treat the array lists. Let's try to do that. Okay. So earlier, what we were doing, we were copying a file, right? So let me copy this code blocks, Ctrl+Alt, Ctrl+C. Let me write a new file, and let's say new class. Let's do a new class. Let's say we will deal with some student gradebook. Okay. Student. So we create a new Java class, student gradebook, and let's what is the functionality of this particular code? Now handle student grades in a file. So let's first define a student grade book first, and then we will talk about how we should do it. Let's say student grades are input in a file like this. So let's do a file, student grades. Txt. Let's say student grades are inputted like this. Let's say it's like it is like last name Bhunia, Suman, and then let's say it is separated by tab, okay, and then we have its roll number, let's say 01, and we have its grades, let's say 23, separated by comma, 23, comma, 56, and 98. These are the grades in 3 subjects. Similarly, let's say there is a student called Ryan Gosling, comma, Ryan, and let's say 002 is the roll number, and some numbers are 36, comma, 7, and 45. Let's say another student is Stone Gilly, name, and then we put a tab. Now don't align them, try to align them. If you put double tab, there will be problem, because we will see in the splitter function. But for now, let's say we put a single tab, and let's say the roll number is 05, and we put a tab, and then we put the numbers. Let's say the numbers are 44, 54, 79, and let's say this is our normal file. I mean, there can be hundreds of students, of course, and that's why we want to use ArrayList. That's why I am using this particular practice with ArrayList. But let's, for the time being, these are my inputs. These are my input file. These are the grade books. Now the objective is going through a grade book that is stored in this kind of text file, and then determining what are the average number per student. Okay. Now of course I could have done this, okay, just by writing a program without taking a in file or something, right? But that is very cumbersome for the user. So instead, user will create a file where it stores all the data, and we should try to read from the file, and whatever is needed, like let's say I want to try get what is the average among all the students and things like that, we can do that here. Okay, so let's do that. So we understand this is the input file. By the way, in Eclipse you can put this like both screen like side by side, so that you can understand what is here and how we should deal with it. Let me copy the content of this file, because we will be using a lot from this particular file, right? So let me just copy over and Control C, and let us go back here. I just copied it. So basically it is same code, right? Now so the function is, first I will go through each student and I will calculate what is the average number for each student and write it to a new file. We call it the file average. Okay, how should we do this? So let me get rid of this input from the user and output, like understanding what is the source file and all this stuff. Why I am doing this? Because typing every time is tedious, so I'll not do it. So I'll just simply comment it out. So I'll go here. Of course I can do this. So I just comment it out. So what I can do is I can just simply say string source file equals student grades dot txt, right? Sorry, txt. I can simply say that. Also I can say string dist file equals student average dot txt. So let me deal with that. So again we have to create a scanner to read from this input file, and we have to also create a print writer to output that file. So the task is again read from this file and then output to the file the average of the students. So again my method will be to read each line, right? We first come to the line. Okay, now I print the read line. Instead of putting this line, we'll be printing it in a different way. So let's do that. You remember that this function in scanner dot next line will read this entire line, right? So first we will have to separate this string like the first portion of the string, that is the name Bhunia Suman, and the separator is tab, right? And then 001, that is the roll number, that is also a string, and we have to separate it, and then separator, and then this string to understand what are the numbers or grades. So first method we should say parts, so we can use the function. So line dot split, okay, remember the split, and we can use what is the splitter? Tab, right? Tab is a white space character, and in this case we want to separate the strings using tab. Okay. So let's hold these in a array called parts. P-A-R-T-S. Now hover over it and it will ask you to create a local variable parts. So split method returns an array list, sorry, not array list, an array of string. So we got that. So we can say string name equals parts 0, right? Then string roll, or let's not do string, let's do integer. Integer, because it is an integer number, roll equals integer dot parse int, and then we should do parts 1. Sorry, 1, right? So at this point, if we see the first line, then name is Bhunia Suman, right? Then roll equals 001, right? This is what is becoming. And here, let's say line equals, let me copy that entire thing, Control C, Control V. So this is the case. Then the last part, grades string grades equals parts 2, right? So we have two tabs, one is here and another one is here. So when we use the split method, it splits into 3 separate strings. The first one will be the name, and second one will be the roll, and third one will be the grades separated by comma. Now our task is to separate or fetch the grades as well, right? So how to fetch the grades? What we have to do is we have to split the grades by comma again. So grades dot split. Okay, let me write down first what is the grade here. So grades contains 23, 56, 98, right? So grades dot split, and we have to split it by the comma. If we do that, then we will have the grades. So let me call it GN, grade numbers. Okay, grade numbers equals this. And our grade number will also be an array of characters, strings. If we want to get the average, how we can do that is first we have to sum this. Okay, so if we do grade numbers, okay, we have to do integer dot parse int, right? Parse int, and then we can do grades numbers, and we can pass 0, right? Plus, so if I do that, right, then it will convert 23, this string 23, into integer 23. So let's do equals integer dot this plus integer dot parse int grades number 1 plus integer dot parse int grade numbers 2, right? If I do that, then it will calculate the sum. So this will be 23, this will be 56, this will be 98, and then double average equals sum divided by 3.0, right? If I do that, our average will be calculated. Okay. Now what we want to do is we want to put the average in the output file, right? So let's do that. So now we will write in the output file. So output file, we will not do printf, we will do printf. Let's start with, first we will write the name. So %s, right? Then what we should do, we can do %d, that is for roll, and then %f, that is for the average. So it should do name, and then name, roll, and then average, right? This is how should we do it. Now, so then it will calculate the output file, right? And so it will go line by line, read each name, and then put it there. Now let's print this. I want to do it this way because then you will understand why we use the format specifier and what is the advantage of it. So let's run this program. If I run this program, it says, you'll see, reading these files and then done with the file. And why again? I have to go to project and then refresh to see the output file. And the output file name we specified here, student average, right? So let's open student average. You see, it is printing like this, right? Let's open it here. That's why I wanted to, like, if you see, it is printing without any space, without anything, and like it's very garbage. So what should you do? We should format the output very nice way. So first thing is to put a new line after every line, so that way we can understand it correctly. Now backslash is not taking in the output printer, so just %n and it will do it. Why it is not here? It is doing it, right? Then what we could do is we can specify, you remember in my class that we say specifier, we can write, let's say 20 or 10, 20, 15, let's say 15, and this name will be, there will be allocated space of 15 character, and within that the name will be printed. Now to left align it, I have to, it will be right aligned at this point, right? And then let's say %d, so let's say %4d, and this is like we want to calculate 6.2, so 4 character before the decimal point and 2 character after the decimal point. That's how we want to format it. And like, so at this point you see the names are aligned right way, right aligned. Now we want to do left align the names. If we want to do the left align of the names, we have to just put a minus here, and then it will left align the names. click on the file and we'll see this, right? Now let's say we are printing the names here, right? Now let's say I want to print it in like not in Bhunia Sumon, that kind of fashion. We want to print it in the fashion that will say S Bhunia, right? How we should do it. So the correct way of doing it is like this. You got the name here, right? Name equals this. Now split the name with comma as well. So if you do parts, name dot split with comma, then your first name and last name will be separated, right? So if name equals split 1, right? Because the first name is printed left, so it is at index 1. String. Similarly, we have to get the last name. Control X. So let's do last name equals 0. So it will contain L name equals Bhunia, right? Because Bhunia is at the 0th place, and then if name equals Suman, right? That is the case. Now we have to get the S part, right? So how we should do it? We should write string modify or fancy, let's call it fancy name equals. So we have to get first name. So if name dot substring, we have to do begin index, that is 0, and ending index. What will be the ending index? Remember, ending index should be whatever ending index you want plus 1. So we have to do ending index as 1, right? And then plus your L name. L name. So now your fancy name should be S Bhunia, right? So let's do that instead of name. Now let's put fancy name. And you can see you have S Bhunia. Now see, what is the problem? Here you did not put a space. So we have to put a space character here, and it will be printed like this. So next one, and you see there is a space between this. Now let's talk about some problem. Let's say here in this gilly I wanted to align it properly, and I put 2 space here, 2 tabs. Let's see what happens. See, there is a format exception, because in this case, because here is a tab, so the second part becomes a tab, and that it is trying to convert to a integer roll number, which cannot be done. So that's why we have a number point format exception, right? So with this kind of files, we have to be careful what kind of alignment, what kind of formatting we are specifying, right? So let's say we do is like this. We put a space. Let's see what happens. See, this space is treated as a character. In this case, So if for my first name I print a space, so it cannot be like this, it has to be over here. So this is how we understood how we are getting a, we are taking the inputs from the file and we are printing it. Now let's say we want to store all these numbers and all these averages, and later on we want to do some calculation. And so first we have to store these numbers into an array, right? We have to store this number into an array. But remember, when we are reading a text file, we don't know how many elements there will be, right? We don't know how many lines there will be, right? In the beginning. So what we should do, we have to use an array list, right? So here we have to define an array list of double. Now remember, when we are doing the array list, we have to define double capital D, because capital D is a class and small d is a primitive data type. When we are doing array list, we have to use capital D double equals new, we have to first define the variable that let's say average avg list, that will contain the list of average. New array list double, like that. And then we will have an warning that says we have to import the Java array list. We do that. So we will simply, when we get the average, right, we got the average, we will simply add this. So avg list dot add, and then we will do the average, right? So you have refactor. So if you want to refactor something like in rename, you just come to click on the variable and then refactor and rename option AVERAGE, because I mistyped last time. So continue. That way it will rename not only here, but it will rename its reference which was here as well. That is the beauty of Eclipse. That is you should, when you are trying to renaming something, always try to do refactor instead of renaming just to one place. So we add this in the list. Now you can write a like at this place you can use this average list to do anything. For an example, let's say you want to calculate the average of the student average, or find out what is the highest of the student average. So you can do that. Let's define a function for finding student average. Let's say static double find highest, and you take a array list of double. You remember how to find the maximum and minimum, right? So let's do array. You take array and you want to find the maximum. So first what you do, let's say double highest value equals double dot mean value. Okay, we assign a very minimum, like infinitely minimum minus infinite in the highest value, so that any first element will be more than this mean value. So now we write a for loop for, let's write a enhanced for loop for double element inside this array list. So error if this highest value is less than this element, right? Then what we do, we say highest value equals this element, right? So this is the, you already know how to find the highest value. So this is the way to do it. Then return highest value, right? This is the way to do it. Find highest. So at this time I can say system dot out dot println highest, not println, let's do printf, or println is fine. Highest among the students is plus find highest. We can do what was the average list, avg list, right? So here we are trying to print what is the highest among the student, and we pass the array list to the function, and it will get you the highest value. Let's print it. Let's try to run it. You see, the highest among the student is 66 points. This. Okay. Similarly, we can get lowest, minimum, or whatever we want. So basic idea is, like, you first go through the file line by line, and we extract the information whatever we need, and we store into that array list, and then we use the array list to do all the statistical functions, right? So that is how we should do it. And I think this concludes today's class. We understood how to use the different string functionalities with care, and also we understood how to use array list. Okay, see you in the next class, where we will be talking about classes and objects.